Good morning, Dublin Unified, and welcome to our first day back to the new school year. I'm Chris Funk, your superintendent, and with me today is Dr. Matt Campbell. And today we are going to set the stage for our work this year and continue to progress as an outstanding school district that just provides a world-class education for all of our students. I want to start by just quickly going over what we hope to accomplish today. First and foremost, this is my second year as superintendent, so there are certain things that are extremely important to me as a leader that I want to highlight and reinforce from last year's conversation. We want to deepen our understanding about the work for this year because it's not all new initiatives. It's going deeper with what we started last year and even prior to me coming to Dublin. We want to prepare to receive our students, and I know so many of you have been around all summer long doing that, and of course our amazing staff has been working extremely hard to get our schools ready. And then deepen our understanding of leading with equity, because that is also a major tenet of the work that we're going to be doing this year. But first and foremost, Matt and I we want to stand here and thank you on behalf of the Board of Education and the Executive Council. We want to thank you for everything that you've done last year, because we know I just completed my 32nd year in education, and we know the last 2.5, 3 years has been like no other years in education. And although we were back full-time last year, we were all still dealing with the effects of the pandemic, right? We were all still dealing with who was vaccinated and who's not, with masking, with tracing and tracking and all those things that are associated with it, keeping everyone safe. We were still dealing with the anxiety of the pandemic and all the impacts of COVID-19. But yet, as an organization, you all rose to the occasion like you always do, and we did an amazing job servicing our students, providing the greatest resources possible. And if you recall, one of the key things I asked of our organization last year was that coming off the pandemic, the adult responses to student behavior had to be different than pre-pandemic. And you guys all did that. And from the bottom of my heart, I thank you for that. The shortage, the amount of time each and every one of you gave up on your prep to cover for someone that was absent, primarily because of COVID, we know the impact that put on you as professionals, as teachers. And so you really just did an amazing job providing a world-class education for our students. So thank you on behalf of the board and my team. Thank you for all that you do for this community. We also know that over the summer, there was some amazing work that was accomplished. And I don't want to name one department over another because I will forget in my old age and I'll leave someone out. But think about what it took to prepare our schools to receive our students this year. I believe we've done more work this summer than we have in the last 10 years. And what I mean by that, if you think about all the work that was done with maintenance and instruction, maintenance and operations, when you think about all the professional development that was provided this year, when you think about how we supported our students with summer school and through nutrition services, providing lunches to our students, when you think about the technology work that was done in your classrooms, when you think about how hard HR worked to hire all the employees that we needed to hire, this was an amazing summer, and I just want to thank everyone for helping to prepare our school to receive our students in the coming year. A huge thank you to all of you. Last year, if you remember this slide, integrity is something that's very important to me. And the reason it's important to me because it's really the foundation of who I am as a leader. And I want to go a little bit deeper this year when we talk about integrity and what's it mean as an individual, what's it mean interpersonally, and what does it mean as an organization. And so the simple thing is integrity is about keeping your word, right? That's my responsibility to you as an individual I make an agreement with, or with me and the larger organization. Keeping your word is pivotal in being successful. And then if you're unable to keep your word, you need to interrupt that and explain why, and then you need to try to repair it. And so this is a critical component as an organization. And I want to go a little bit deeper on this because when one doesn't keep their word, whether it is personally to themselves to another individual, to a department, to a school, to the organization, then things fester. And so when we look at this, what we call the ROP protocol, recognize that you are not in integrity, interrupt being out of integrity, and then repair it. This was a protocol that I brought from my last district, and it was through the EPIC Foundation that they provided us as a system to respond to implicit bias. I think it's a very appropriate tool to respond to remaining in integrity as an individual and as a system. And what do I mean by that? When you look at the 3 levels of integrity, one is my personal integrity, right? So when I make a commitment to myself, maybe it's to start eating better, or to start exercising, or to learn another language, or to be a better spouse or a better parent, and I fall short of that, I'm out of integrity with myself. And so that's a component that we need to recognize when we're out of integrity, we need to disrupt it, and then we need to repair it, whatever it may be, because you know that voice inside of you sometimes can be the worst enemy, our own worst enemy. And if we don't repair it and love ourselves, then being out of integrity can really create a lot of stress and anxiety just with oneself. When you think about intrapersonal integrity, when I make a commitment to you, when I give you my word that I'm going to complete this task, and then I do not, think about the impact of that individual that you have on them, because maybe they can't complete their task because they need you to complete yours first. And so if we give our word and we give a date to complete something, and we don't, we need to honor that, recognize it, and then try to repair it. If we know that we're not even going to reach it after we've said it, then we need to interrupt that and stop it so that we can then adjust and repair it a lot quicker. And if we actually don't acknowledge our mistakes, if we don't acknowledge the fact that we're out of integrity, then it just festers. And then think about it as an organization, because as we progress through this presentation, we share with you some data. I want you to think about, what does that mean as a system of being out of integrity? Dublin Unified has been out of integrity for some time with our community around our bond and facilities. Now, I think in the last year, we've made huge progress, right? And I think we're starting to restore that trust with the community around our bond program. But it's taken some time, and I believe we have been out of integrity with the voters. We have made promises to schools that have not been kept. We're way behind schedule building Emerald High School. Now, if you've driven by it recently, you know we're making great progress. So we're regaining some of that trust, because we had to interrupt being out of integrity, and we had to repair that. We have a board right now that might be somewhat out of integrity with some of our voters around texting. We need to interrupt that, and we need to repair that, not only with our community, but with members of the governance team, because some would say that we're kind of out of integrity right now as a governance team, and we need to interrupt that and repair whatever damage has been. Think about being out of integrity with either your closest peer or colleague, or with your grade level or your school. How can we interrupt being out of integrity and then repair the damage that has been done? Think about potentially opportunities where maybe through grading, we're out of integrity because of some of the bias that may come into grading. Those are the type of things as an organization we need to be aware of and try to disrupt it and then repair the damage that's been done. So keep in mind being in integrity as we move forward today. You know, this was also a slide that we talked about last year because it's important that when I first thought about coming to Dublin, I was amazed at the achievement levels of our district. We do an amazing job supporting our students, and when you look at our data as a whole, we are an outstanding district. We're one of the best in the state. But if we're not willing to peel back the onion and look at some of the other data, some of the subsets of the data, if we're not willing to actually lead with questions and not answers, if we're not able to engage in dialogue that may be somewhat uncomfortable, which we will be this year around implicit bias, it's an invitation to be uncomfortable. It's not an invitation to point fingers. It's not an invitation to cast blame. It's an invitation to enter into a dialogue and have a conversation. If we're not willing to do that and then build mechanisms that support our students and staff when things start to go haywire, then as a system, we start to leak, right? And we're out of integrity as a system. So these are things that are extremely important to us to manage as a system so that we can continue to grow as an organization and provide a world-class education to all of our students. Speaking to specifically our teachers and counselors and school site staff, I love this quote from Carl Glickman. Research has found that faculty in successful schools always question existing instructional practice and do not blame lack of student achievement on external causes. The source of the problem in ordinary schools is always someone else. The students, the parents, or caretakers, the school board, the administration. I'm asking us this year, as we refocus our professional learning communities, that we actually look internally on our best practices and areas that we can grow and how we support students so that every single student receives a world-class education from Dublin Unified. So think about that as we move forward with some of our data today. And of course, we want to do things that's based on a system approach. And a system approach means that we are consistent across the board, that if you go to school A, school B, school C, you're going to receive a world-class education. It's not going to be because you particularly had one great teacher, because we have a great teacher in every single classroom, because our counselors reach out to students across the board consistently. We need to have a system approach. What happens with our practice within the classroom, with our practice of engaging students and families, what happens at the policy level, particularly at the board level who creates the policy, and the access, making sure that we provide the access to all students and the scaffolding and support and the rigor needed for all students to be successful. So we'll continue to think about our improvement as a system through a systems approach. Dr. Anthony Muhammad, a healthy system is dependent on the quality of the relationships implementing reform. I love this quote, but I want to talk about reform because we're not here to reform Dublin Unified. We are an amazing system. What we're not quite yet is a system that provides a world-class education for every single student. We're close, we're getting there, but we have room to improve. So it's not about reforming, it's just about improving our practices, becoming more efficient, and making sure that everyone has that mindset that every single student deserves a world-class education. You'll remember this pyramid from last year. People know at the district office and leadership, I love pyramids. And every single level of the pyramid is critical, but again, creating a culture where people are not afraid to take chances, where we're not afraid to make mistakes as long as we are being creative and we understand when we fall a little short and we adjust. And it's about relationships. And it's about relationships throughout the entire level of the organization. And one of the areas that we're really going to challenge you on in terms of relationships this year is how we function at each of your PLC teams. That's going to be critical this year for the work that we do. So I want to turn over the next part of the presentation to Dr. Campbell. He's going to walk us through some data here.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate that inspirational message. I am here to share the data with you. Before we get into the data, I want to cover this particular slide because it's really, really important. So as a district, we are committed to building capacity amongst all staff members to ensure that equity and inclusion are essential principles of our school system. On the left-hand side, specifically, we will build capacity to attain equitable DOSD communities where all staff are welcome as they are. Strengths and areas of growth for all staff are known and supported. Adults positively respond to the social, emotional, and professional needs of every staff member. And all staff have a strong sense of identity within the organization. On the right-hand side, students, all students are welcome as they are. Strengths and areas of growth are supported and known. Adults positively respond to the social and academic needs of every student, and all students, all in capitalized, all students are engaged with tasks that develop this strategic thinking. I'm here to cover some data, but before I go over the data, I just want to let you know that some of the data may make you uncomfortable. Some of the data is alarming. When you look at Dublin Unified School District, we are a district where all of our students, when you look at all students combined, all 12,000 students, we are off the charts. We're one of the highest performing school districts in the state of California, as Chris said. But it's important to also peel back the onion a little bit to really see how all students are performing. PLC, Chris mentioned PLC. PLC has a motto, all means all, meaning all students, we are here for all students. So this data is going to raise some questions. This data may make some people uncomfortable, but it's really important for us to look at this data as we go through. So a couple of things on this data before I progress. So you can see, this is the demographic makeup of all of our students. Black or African American students make up 2.89% of our student body. Our Hispanic students make up 9% of our student body. So you can see the demographic breakdown. All right, so this chart right here, this is star reading. So you have two different data sets. You have, in blue, you have at the end of the pandemic year, 2020 and 21, star reading. And then you have at the end of last year, that's the red bar, 21, 22. So again, if you look at all students, Dublin Unified School District is doing really well. 93% of our students were on grade level at the end of last year. However, when you look back at and you look at this different student groups of how they're performing, you see some alarming numbers. So our black students, at the end of the pandemic, in 2021, 41% of them were reading at grade level. Now, you can see there's a significant jump of last year, at the end of last year. So 70% of our black students were at grade level. So let's celebrate the growth. That's 31% growth, which is really significant. However, when you compare how our black students are compared to our Asian students, our highest performing group, you can see that they're still 26 points behind our Asian student group. And then Hispanic, you can see 81% of them at the end of last year were at grade level, but it's still significantly behind our highest performing student group. Okay, so what you see here is star reading, and so it's the end of third grade, so same thing, the data set's the same, so you have how our students did at the end of third grade, at the end of the pandemic year, 2021, and then you see how the fourth graders, so then we tested them again as fourth graders, so you can see the gap. Again, our black students at the end of the pandemic year, only 35% of them at the end of third grade were reading at grade level. Significant growth, 73%. We need to celebrate that. However, they are still, the achievement gap is still significantly, that gap is really big. So you have a gap of 26%, or 26 points between the black and the Asian students. Again, Hispanic, 79%, so you can see the significant achievement gap. The reason I highlight this over here is we have English learners. Let's celebrate that 76% of our English learners, the end of fourth grade, were at grading level. However, you can see that how our black students are still 3 points behind our English learner students at the end of fourth grade. Okay, math, going on to math. You can see our student group, same thing, consistent, end of the pandemic year, 2021, end of last year, 21-22. You can see that our black students are at the end of all district-wide, 55% of them are at grade level. And then you can see that at the end of the pandemic year, there are 35%. So there's 20% growth, which is significant. However, they are still 40 points behind our highest performing student group, which is the Asian student group. I pointed this out. So it's also important to note that our students with disabilities are performing 3 points higher than our black students when you look at district-wide. Our Hispanic students, same thing. There's some growth there, but they are still significantly behind our highest performing Asian group. Very similar, this is the math, end of third grade and fourth grade. Again, we took the third graders, we tested them at the end of third grade, and then we also tested them as fourth graders. So you can see the significant growth, which is outstanding. However, our black students are still significantly behind our Asian students and the Hispanic students. Now, this in particular is a data set where our black students had significant growth and increase and closed the achievement gap. However, there's still a lot of work to do. Okay, now this, we're going to transition from math and reading to graduation rates. So what you see right here is you see graduation rates across the board broken down by all students. Again, if you look at our graduation rates for all students, it's really high, 97%. I mean, that is off the charts when compared to statewide. So I just wanted to point a couple of things out. So in 2019, so our black graduation rate was 76%. 2020, that was the first year we went into it, and this was the year where we did credit, no credit. And so then you can see a significant increase in graduation rates, which is outstanding. 2021, Governor Newsom passed a bill, AB 104, said that you can graduate with a state minimum number of credits, which is 130 credits. So you can see the trend continues. AB 104 extended to 2022, so it dipped a little bit from 92% to 83%. However, it's still really high. Now, I think what's important to note here is that our black students, when they 83% graduated last year, our students with disabilities, 81% of them graduated. Now, AB 104 is going to sunset, so we're going to go back to what it was like in 2019 without the safeguards of graduation. So again, we still have a lot of work to do. Now, this is not the exclusive role of the staff at Dublin High School and Valley to make sure that our students graduate. So as students get as we receive students through our system and they matriculate through our system, it's important that everybody is on the same page to make sure that we give them the skills, the developments, and the dispositions to make sure that when they get to high school, then they have the proper skill and knowledge to make sure that they can graduate. All right. A to G completion rate. So this is a little bit nuanced, but I just wanted to spend a couple of moments in just explaining what it is. So A to G, we have courses here at Dublin High that are A to G approved. And so if you pass with a C or better, then you get credit for completion, what they call the A to G completion rate. So as you can see, our Asian students, 88% of them are passing UC approved courses at a high percentage rate. So our black students last year, 48% of them, only half of them passed these courses. Now, you can still graduate. You can still, if you take a course and get a D, you still get credit, you still graduate, but you have to get a C or better. So you can see that there is a significant achievement gap between our highest performing student group and our lowest performing student group. Our English learners are struggling at 22%. So again, as Chris said, it's important that we peel back the onion district-wide. We're doing really well, but it's important for us to know, for us to recognize these trends, and for us to interrupt it. All right, this is suspension data. So what you see here is you see a breakdown of 1920, which is the year that we went into the shelter in place. But then 2021, you see last year, so it's comparison data. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time that school by school, but I think this is what's important. So this is elementary suspensions. So this bar down here, pay attention to this bar down here. This bar down here is a breakdown of the percentage of our student population. So remember the 2.89%. So that represents this band right here. The 9% of the Hispanics represent this band. So the 60% of Asians represent this band. So you can see the suspensions, the percentage of the suspensions, not total numbers, but the percentage of the suspensions in 1920 and last year right here. So you see that our black students were 14% and our Hispanic students at 25%. That's an over disproportionate number of suspensions in the elementary school. I'll go back to this. This is middle school. Oh, sorry. How do you go back, Adam?
The bottom.
Yeah. This is school by school breakdown of the suspensions, and you can see, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time, but you can see the different breakdown of the suspension school by school. So again, this includes Cottonwood Creek 6-8, plus Fallon and Wells. So you can see the suspensions. You can hear the suspensions right here, 1920. The student band is still the same. The color proportions are still the same. So right here, 21-22, last year, you have 36% of the suspensions were African American and 17% were our Hispanic students. Now we know that these kids they didn't spend very little time, the 8th graders last year on a middle school campus. So we knew that the behavior challenges were real. And so just wanted to point out that there's a high disproportionate number of suspensions at the middle school. So here we have high school, again a breakdown of the suspensions of 1920 and then 21-22. So right here is the high school suspension. So here you have here 1920, the breakdown. It's very similar in terms of the number of suspensions for African American and Hispanic students. Again, the color band is the same here. All right, so this is some really, really interesting data. So what you see here is you see data, this is after the second trimester, and what you are looking at is the demographic breakdown for K-5. So you have K-5. I want you to pay attention to this number right here, 65. So last year, K-5, we had 65 African-American students, black male students. So the next slide, you're going to see an elementary report card. So right here, it's called a plus, well, it's the plus, and so it's an area of strength. And so if students had an area of strength in these next areas I'm going to show you, you will see the breakdown of the percentage district-wide. All right, so elementary has a report card, standards-based, and so at the bottom, we have a category that's called college, community college, and career readiness. So what you see right here is a breakdown of district-wide, again, at the end of the second trimester, the data. Over here, you have, different skills that students need to have in order to be successful in a classroom. Collaboration, self-control, organizational skills, focus. But as you can see, the male marks for African American or African American boys are significantly lower than any other student group. So this right here, organizational skills, focus, down here is uses time well. So 3%, again, of that number 65. So 3% of 65 are 2 students. So district-wide, we had 2 students that were African-American male that had an area of strength in this, again, after the end of the second trimester. But when you compare it to all the other student groups, it's significantly lower. So talking about implicit bias, talking about how we are going to recognize this, interrupt it, and then repair it. What I have showed you is reading, math, graduation rates, A to G completion rates, elementary report card data. So again, all students were doing really well, but when you break it down into the different subgroups, we have some work to do. And so what this represents is that we are in significant disproportionality when it comes to a couple of different student groups. And it's not surprising that we're in significant disproportionality with our African American students and our Hispanic students. So what this means is that means that we have too many African American and Hispanic students are being overqualified in special education in the category of specific learning disability. There's 14 ways of how you can qualify for special education. Now, this is one of them, specific learning disability. So the state of California is in essence saying we are overqualifying these students in this particular category. So as you can see, for the past 3 years, these students, these students are overrepresented in special education. Now, for this particular year, emotional disturbance, or ED, we have our white students that are in as well. So with that being said, so that's the story of the data and the arc, what we have to recognize, and then what we have to now interrupt. So with that being said, Chris is going to come back and he's going to highlight our initiatives.
So before I jump to this slide, and you'll notice it's not a pyramid this year, I just want to say a couple things about the suspension data. We're not here standing in front of you saying that kids should not ever be suspended. There is times where the behavior is so inappropriate and dangerous that a student should be suspended. That's the appropriate adult response. What I'm challenging our system to do is to make sure that, one, we go back and even peel the onion back a little bit more and say, okay, for this type of suspension, and we look at student A and student B, did we give them the same amount of days? Or potentially, if you're black, did you get suspended for more days for the same event that an Asian student or white student got suspended for less time? Peel back the onion. Secondary, there are APs and the principals, so there's more administrators involved with the suspension of kids. Is there a particular administrator that may be suspending students more than another? Is it consistent across the board how we treat students? No blame. Let's just do that autopsy, look at the data, and see if our implicit bias, our personal biases, are playing a part of some of our decisions. Peel back again. Let's look at the number of referrals to the office. Have schools looked at minor and major impacts of what are we going to keep in the classroom and handle ourselves as teachers, and what are we going to send the student to the office for? And let's peel back the onion some more. Is there a particular department, a particular time of the day, a particular employee that is sending more referrals than anyone else? And maybe there needs to be a conversation support plan put in place for that person. These are all things that the system needs to be the response to, not an individual person, because we're not here to cast blame. It's a system response. That elementary report card is a system report card. And we've already changed part of it. We've taken out the college and career readiness. How the heck is a 7-year-old who is not very good at time management, not ready for college at 7 years old, right? So that's a system problem that we need to address. So again, our goal this year is to really look at data and let the data inform our decision making. So when you look at our initiatives, this should not scare anyone because there's nothing new here, right? Our multi-tier system of support. We've had that in place for several years. We need to go back and revisit our practices because the pandemic interrupted it. But again, it's in place and we need to continue to build on it. Same with our professional learning community as a district or as a school site, but actually our PLC teams, how they operate. Our social emotional wellness. We've been talking about this for years now. It's just become more prevalent across the state, and certainly the pandemic highlighted it, but we've done an amazing job supporting our students. Whether it's an individual teacher in the classroom, the type of environment that you create to make sure kids are safe, whether it is our counselors, social workers, administrators, the adults on campus who truly care for the kids, we've been doing that type of support for a long time. We certainly are trying to make decisions with an equity mindset and an equity lens. The mindset is that every single student deserves a world-class education. Every single student deserves the same level of rigor. They may need some support to get to that rigor, but it's not lesser expectations for this group of kids. And it's not about my student that I'm working with or my group of students that I'm working with. It's a collective identity that all means all, that I'm here to support any student on my campus, not just in my classroom. And that means if I'm walking to the office, I'm walking to wherever I may be going on campus, and I see inappropriate behavior, or I see a student that might be struggling, I don't just walk by because it's our students. And I'm going to try to intercede and interrupt and provide support for that student. So this is what I hope to be our collective identity. It's not a new initiative. I invite you to say, hey, why are we doing this practice? Because if it doesn't fit in these boxes here that support student outcomes, then you have a right to question, why are we doing this? Or can we stop doing this outdated practice? When we talk about our student outcomes, one of the key things I brought and I hope to highlight last year was our key performance measures. How are we going to measure ourselves as an organization? And how can we improve? Because, man, some of our data is truly outstanding, right? But some of the data that you just saw, we have some work to do. And so some of the non-negotiables when it comes to student outcomes is that we want to make sure that reading and math assessments are given to every K-8 student and to all 9-12 students. And it needs to be based on our assessment calendar so that we can track the growth of students throughout the year. So it's not one school doing one assessment and another school doing another different assessment at a different time. We're consistent on that. Academic progress will be monitored and interventions will be given to those students who need Tier 2 and Tier 3 support. Look, we have our data. We know which kids are coming to us not at reading level, so let's not wait 4 or 5 months to intercede. Let's build our interventions immediately. Let's build how we're going to respond in the classroom from day one and not wait till October, November to start addressing some of these shortfalls that our kids have. Let's build them up as quickly as possible. Use of district adopted materials as a primary source for instruction. We have board approved curriculum and materials, and so we expect teachers to follow that curriculum. And every 7th grader will have a 6-year academic plan, and it will get adjusted each year. We can't wait for kids to enter high school to say, hey, do you want to go to college? Because it's not just a high school issue. It's a community issue, right? And we have so many immigrants in our community that it's the first time in their family someone's going to a college in the United States, that they need to understand the system as soon as possible. They need to understand the financial responsibilities to go to college and what it takes to go to the college of a student's choice. And so it needs to start in the middle school and not wait till they get to high school. I talked a little bit already about the equity mindset and what's important here. Every single employee will be going through implicit bias this year. Every employee will be invited to an equity triad and will be provided journals so that when in between the trainings, you have a group of 2 individuals that you can meet with, however often you want to meet with them to talk about some of the equity issues that you've come across. Because it's not just a one-time sit and get. You got to continue to build that equity muscle every single day. And professional learning on cultural competency, restorative practice, and gender spectrum awareness. Stuff that we began as a system last year and years prior. We're just going to continue to focus on that. So I hope no one feels that this is something new, but this is the lens that we want to provide as an organization as we continue to move forward. Matt?
Thank you, Chris. I'm really excited about continuing the work with the professional learning communities. As you can see, so right here, the big ideas and the major tenets this year, 50 staff members from Dublin went to Sacramento to a PLC conference in July, and then the week after that we hosted Doug Fisher, which is a renowned educator, and he came in, and so what we did is combine the work from what we learned in Sacramento, the PLC conference, in addition to the Doug Fisher conference. So the 3 big ideas: focus on learning, we need to have a collaborative culture. Chris already mentioned it, it's all means all the students are our students, and a results-oriented orientation. The 3 guiding questions: what do we want students to know? How do we know if they've learned it? How are we going to respond if they haven't learned it? And then how are we going to extend the learning? Some non-negotiables. We need to focus on the mastery of essential standards. We need to implement a guaranteed and viable curriculum. So it doesn't matter where you are being educated in our district, that we're implementing the same curriculum, guaranteed and viable curriculum. Learning intentions and success criteria must be shared with students. We need to use high-impact instructional strategies, and collaboration shall be directed by the principal with input from the teachers, but collaboration needs to focus on a cycle of inquiry and focus on evidence of student learning. So when you meet with your PLC teams, you're going to bring evidence of student learning so that you can focus on the learning of all students. MTSS, as Chris already mentioned, so again, nothing new here, but we're going to be committed to the MTSS process. Again, just to review, Tier 1, this is instruction and curriculum for all students. Tier 2 is targeted academic and behavioral intervention for some students done by teachers. And then also Tier 3, that's the more intensive academic, social, and emotional interventions for a few students as you go up that triangle. We have cost teams at every school site. We have cost forms, and the process is going to be extremely important that we use the forms and that we follow the process. And monitoring the student progress, that's going to be critically important. When we follow the assessment calendar, we know exactly where students scored and then who we're going to target to make sure that we then can follow up and make sure that those continue the intervention for those particular students that need additional help and support. Now, how you do it, of course, that's a site-based decision. Social emotional wellness. Our students are dealing with trauma. It's important that we take care of ourselves and we take care of the students. Creating a safe and caring environment where students feel a true sense of belonging is critically important. Supportive and collaborative partnership with everybody, all of our educational partners in the community. And then non-negotiable, you need to know all the students' name as quickly as you can and use their pronoun, their preferred pronoun. Warmly greet students daily and use the district SEL resources and tools to create a caring classroom environment to support individual student needs. I just wanted to highlight one last thing. John Hattie, those of you know John Hattie, he's done a lot of research, and the number one effect size that affects student learning is, he calls it collective efficacy. It's a 1.57 on his scale. And what that means is that if everybody, and this is, I'm going to highlight what Chris was saying, if everybody truly believes that every student is capable of learning at high levels, and if everybody is on the same page, that we then can make a huge difference in the lives of our students, and we can ensure that all students are going to learn. And so closing that achievement gap, making sure that every third grader is reading at grade level by third grade, closing that achievement gap so that we then can say that all students, when you kind of Dublin Unified School District, no matter where you are, you're going to receive an incredible education, and we are going to close that achievement gap. I know that it's possible because I've seen the work, I've seen the commitment and the dedication from the administrators, the teachers, and everybody in the system. It's an incredible system with an array of support. And so we are here to help you and to do whatever we feel like you need, the support needed, so that you feel like you have everything that you need when you're working with those students. And I wish you well. Have a great year. I hope you're rested and relaxed, ready to greet those students come Thursday.
Thank you, Matt. Let me just finish by saying that our focus this year is a collective identity. What will we do collectively as an organization? What can we do collectively to support not only each other, but to support every single student so that they receive a world-class education when they leave Dublin Unified? Now, we know that it's time to move forward. COVID's here, it's going to be here to stay. Eventually, we're all going to get it. Unfortunately, I got it in June. Hopefully, like myself, if you do get it, it's mild symptoms. But we need to move forward because that's who we are. We continue to put our head down and do the right thing. But at the same time, this world is more crazy than it's ever been. And so it's important that we have balance in our life. It's important that if you don't take care of yourself, then how can you expect to take care of those students that come before you each day? How can you give yourself to your loved ones at home? Because if you're empty on the inside, because you're burning the midnight oil, because you're giving everything you possibly can 7 days a week to this organization, you're doing a disservice to yourself, and ultimately you're doing a disservice to the organization and to our students. You've got to find that balance between that mindfulness, between healthy choices with your body, and the ability just to feed your soul, whatever that may look like. Because we know it's not a race. Every single school year is a marathon. We know come October, there's a lull, and we all kind of hit a wall. Please take care of each other. Please take care of yourself. And we're going to have another great year. Thank you for your time and attention today. I wish you all the very best. Thank you for being part of this amazing organization. Good luck this year. Take care of yourself, and we'll see you soon. Thank you. Have a great day. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.